Alright guys, welcome back to the channel. It's Maddie here, and guess what? Ranked battles are finally back. The new ranked season for Crimson Blaze B1A has finally begun. It's going to be just over 2 weeks, this ranked season, so it's going to be a little bit shorter than normal, but at least we have ranked back, and I'm very excited about it. And of course, because ranked is back, we have our video series that has returned, the best decks for ranked battles. We've gotten, I believe, 8 or 9 different decks to showcase today. A lot of people uploaded their, respective best decks for ranked videos, and no disrespect, of course, to any of the other Pokemon Pocket content creators, but I don't really understand uploading the video before ranked is even out, but hey, that's just me. I've been playing a lot, excuse me, I'm still sick. I've been playing a lot of ranked battles today, and testing a whole bunch of decks. I definitely have somewhat of an understanding, I believe, of, the metagame and what I believe are the best decks to play. So that's what we're going to cover today, and you can navigate throughout this video using the timestamps down below, the energy types for the decks also down in the timestamps. People ask me that all of the time, but before we get into the decks, guys, you gotta go register for PMPT number 16. It is our community tournament series, $300 cash in the prize pool. It is tomorrow, Saturday, January 10th at noontime. It's gonna be a whole lot of fun. We'll be live on YouTube and on Twitch, for the tournament and showcasing Swiss in day 2. It's gonna be a great time. Take a break from ranked, win some actual cash. It's gonna be a whole lot of fun. Link to register down in the description below. Okay, let's get right into the deck lists here. I don't want this video to be too long. To be fair, nothing in this video is like brand new, but all of the decks have been adjusted slightly, like the lists. So this is going to be a sort of an updated video with all of, like, I think the best actual 20 card lists to play right now, and try them out. Let me know what works for you guys. And the other thing I want to mention, again, this is a long intro. The other thing I want to mention here is that if a deck isn't on this video, that doesn't mean it's not a good deck, especially to hit Master Ball. Like, you can hit Master Ball rank with virtually any deck, but to increase your odds and to maximize your win rates, these are the decks that I would choose personally. But go ahead and feel free to play whatever deck you want to play. The first deck we're going to talk about is going to be Dark Greninja, which is with, Greninja, Chingling, Mega Absol, and Darkrai. This is a deck that became pretty popular towards the end of last season, and it has kind of, dropped in play rate this season, I would say. Maybe in favor of, like, Altaria Greninja, which is also a strong deck, maybe also in this video, but I still like this deck. And to be fair, I think the metagame in the real trend of today's video is going to be Suicune and Greninja. I still think Suicune Greninja is probably the top deck in the game right now, at least one of the top decks, and it is probably the most common deck in ranked battles, I would say. So when you're playing a deck right now in ranked battles, you have to keep that in mind. You got to be either playing Suicune Greninja or something that you can feel pretty confident into Suicune Greninja, or something that's just happens to be good into everything that's not Suicune and Greninja, although there's not many options like that. So when we're playing, 2 copies of Chingling and Greninja, we have an inherent advantage into Suicune and Greninja because they're not playing Chingling. So we can item lock, get into our Greninjas, we have double Cyruses, and then we can kind of finish the games with Mega Absol. And that's sort of the whole concept here with this deck list. I love the 1 copy of Darkrai and 1 copy of Rocky Helmet in this deck list, mainly for the Chingling lead into other Chingling decks, namely, of course, other Altaria decks that might be playing Chingling, because, we're playing Chingling, but we're also playing Rare Candy Greninja in this deck list. So that is sort of the weird interaction here, is winning the Chingling battle so that we can get into our Greninjas before our opponent. That's pretty valuable. This is a deck list that I really like into Hydreigon, and I honestly like it into Suicune and Greninja more than a lot of other decks, but, it's going to have its consistency problems. It's definitely not the most consistent deck in the world. If you take a look at all of the Pokemon in this deck, none of them we really want in the active spot early in the game other than Chingling. So that is kind of the other downside about this deck, but at the end of the day, as long as we're not leading Darkrai EX, which is our only Pokemon with a retreat cost of 2, we should be pretty fine. Double Research, double Copycat, double Pokeball does make this deck fairly consistent into the mid to late game. It's really just about getting that strong start. I really do like this deck, and not much has really changed about it. You can maybe tech in like an X speed in here, but most of the time you're not going to have it in the early game anyway. So for the most part, I think that this is a totally fine deck, and I think it's a very respectable deck. The decks in this video, by the way, aren't in any order. I haven't ordered these, these decks from best to worst or anything. But I would say that this is probably a little bit lower on my list, right? I think we have 8 decks in this video and then a wild card. So again, I'm just going to kind of give you my thoughts about these decks. They're all like my top 10 decks, but this one, I wouldn't play this this wouldn't be my number 1 pick right now. I'll let you know what I think my number 1 pick would be. But in my testing, I did play a few games with this deck. It does still feel pretty good. It's a little bit high rolly, but again, depending on the matchups, Chingling is going to be really valuable, or, Mega Absol is going to lose you games. Like, it's just sort of that type of deck. You know what I mean? I'm still not a huge fan of Mega Absol, but the cool thing about this deck list is I feel like Mega Absol is actually kind of the star of the show show here. It is the Pokemon that we're choosing to attack with most of the time, and I think that that is kind of unique as far as Mega Absol decks go. But anyway, there's our first deck list, yeah, try it out for yourself. Next up is going to be Decidueye, and I really do think Decidueye is the premier anti-Suicune deck right now. I know a lot of people have been playing Decidueye in recent online tournaments. It's been performing very well because of the high play rate of Suicune and Greninja. The whole concept here is that Sniping Arrow, Decidueye is going to be really good in the early game if your opponent doesn't get a turn to Greninja, because we can just snipe Froakies over and over again. We can Leaf Cape, or of course, as we see here, use Rocky Helmet. This is a more aggressive build, which I do kind of like. One Quick Growth Extract as well. No Chinglings in the list. I know some people, talk about Chingling, and Chingling's a very, very good card, but, things like Decidueye and things like Venusaur, I just don't know if you really need it, especially because most of the time, you're gonna definitely just want the Decidueye early in the game, right? So that's why the One Quick Growth Extract may be in place of something like a Chingling. However, you could cut one of the Decidueye EXs in here for the Chingling. But for right now, I honestly don't really think you need Chingling. I think Decidueye is plenty strong into Suicune specifically. Now, keep in mind, the Rocky Helmets here are going to remove some of the, the thresholds, but this is a more aggressive version of the deck, and I think it actually makes a little bit more sense given some of the other matchups in the metagame right now. Rocky Helmet's going to allow you to kind of KO opposing Chinglings that they might have in the game early right now. Furfrou is a very common lead, so that extra damage on Furfrou is going to be relevant. But at the end of the day, we're either going to evolve our Pokemon early, put a lot of pressure on, stay alive with Lily and Erica's, or we're just not going to draw our Pokemon and we're going to lose, right? That is the inherent downside to Decidueye. It's quite strong, especially going second. Traditionally, Decidueye is a deck that really, really, really wants to go second. So into Suicune, if you go second, you're probably going to win the matchup. If you go first into Suicune, it's kind of 50-50, I'll be honest with you, but into most matchups, going first is going to be pretty bad if you're playing Decidueye. So I really do like this deck. If you happen to just be facing Suicune Greninjas over and over again, this is certainly going to be a very strong anti-meta choice, and I really think that Decidueye is actually just a better overall deck than Venusaur is. Both of them kind of have, very suspicious win rates in tournaments, but again, recently, I think Decidueye's been performing a little bit better than Venusaur, so it would be on my list of recommendations above Venusaur personally. But yeah, like I said, Suicune Greninja is the meta driver, so, a lot of the decks in this video, or at least a few of the decks in this video, are going to be specifically strong into Suicune and Greninja. Decidueye is kind of the number one example of that. I think if you look up the win rates for Suicune and Greninja, Decidueye is actually the highest, or I guess the lowest for Suicune and Greninja. So I do find that to be relevant. If you want to replace the Rocky Helmets for Leaf Capes, if you feel a little bit safer about that, go ahead and do that. But this is a deck that realistically just kind of thrives off the pacing of going second and getting your Decidueyes online. 70 damage to any one of your opponent's Pokemon is really relevant. We can KO so many basics. This Decidueye card is very, very good, especially turn 2 going second. Just an incredible card, realistically. And we don't have to bench a lot of Pokemon with Decidueye, which means that we can kind of take a lot of damage, specifically from Suicune. Most Suicune decks aren't playing multiple copies of Greninja EX. They're playing multiple copies of Water Shuriken. So we're oftentimes able to live a hit and live multiple hits realistically with Lily and Erica. So a very good deck, and it would be definitely on my list of recommendations, which is why we're talking about it in today's video. Next up is going to be Mega Blaziken. So yes, I still feel confident in Mega Blaziken. In fact, when I take a look at the tournament standings, and when I was playing ranked, like a lot of people were playing Blaziken, it's still a very respectable choice here. 210 HP, that one copy of Lily is going to be a really big deal. It brings you up to effectively 270 HP over the course of 2 different turns, which means you have to hit for over 130 damage 2 turns in a row, and that is very difficult to do for a lot of different decks. So Mega Blaziken is very, very tanky. I love the inclusion of Furfrou. It's basically just better than the other Heatmor that people were playing in Blaziken, so this deck has been buffed a little bit. We're playing one Combuskin in the face of Chinglings. This is just a really strong deck. It's a Blaziken deck that thrives in the same ways that it did before last season, but now with Rocky Helmet, with the one Combuskin, with Furfrou, I think this is a deck that actually handles Chingling a little bit better than it did in previous seasons, and I think that's a really big deal, especially in those Altaria matchups, which we're going to get to in today's video. If you're not playing Suicune in Greninja, I really think Altaria is kind of the other best Pokemon in the game. There's not too many Megas, like there's some Absol decks, there's like Blaziken, but of course I do think Altaria is still the best Mega Pokemon, so when you're playing Mega Blaziken, you kind of have a distinct advantage into a lot of different Altaria decks. So This is what we're playing here. One copy of May. May is an underrated card right now. One May, one Copycat is becoming a little bit more common in decks, especially these sort of stage 2 decks that run a middle evolution. It makes things a little bit more smoothly. Again, really trying to combat the Chingling item lock to get around the rare candy shenanigans. Yeah, I mean, nothing else to really say about Blaziken. This is just an updated Blaziken deck, and I really would recommend it. I think that Fire is a little bit suspect. Some people are playing Charizard. I really cannot recommend Charizard above Blaziken or a lot of the other decks in this video. I do like Charizard. I think that it's better than some people give it credit for, but I don't think it's good enough to be considered like a top choice for ranked battles. But again, to each their own. If Charizard, Mega Charizard's working for you, then go ahead, play that, and I wish you the best, quite frankly. But here's Mega Blaziken, and that's the list that I would play for Mega Blaziken. Next up is going to be this Magnezone deck that we actually covered in yesterday's video. I was going to include just a typical Magnezone Oricorio deck, but the more I thought about it, the more I was like, well, realistically, how many people are going to choose to play traditional Magnezone Oricorio in ranked? It really isn't that safe of a choice, and I think that this list from Jimbo that we talked about in yesterday's video is kind of like the premier way that I would choose to play Magnezone Oricorio, or at least sort of the edited version. I pulled the exact same list, I think, but he made a comment on yesterday's video about the revisions that he would make to this deck list after he did very well in a tournament with it. So, Jimbo, if you're watching this video, go ahead, comment down below and post those revisions again. I didn't see the version of the deck, so I just uploaded the same deck list, but he had some changes that he would make. I forget off the top of my head, or you could go check his comment on the previous video. But I like this. So it's traditional Magnezone Oricorio with Chinglings now, with Clement, with Clement's backpack, and the new Magneton. And again, you might be like, well, don't we need the Genetic Apex Magneton? Excuse me, to generate those energies? You realistically don't. Chingling is kind of that buffer. We can manually attach to Magnezone pretty consistently, or we can split energies to Oricorio. There are some games where Oricorio was not going to be that useful, and in those games, we're going to rely on Chingling and Magnezone as a combo, and if Oricorio is useful, then we don't really need Magnezone, do we, right? We're just going to utilize Oricorio. But this Magneton here with Spark and Clement's backpack is really, really cool. A really fun card here. People forget that Clement actually searches your deck for both a Clement's backpack and a Magneton. 2 copies of either of them randomly. So if you have one Clement's backpack in your hand or one Magneton in your hand, and you play Clement, you're going to get one of the either, and you're going to have multiple copies, which is really good. Double Clement's backpack and a Spark Magneton is really strong, and it is just a really decent card here, specifically on those Froakies, right? You got to keep in mind, Froakie in the active spot is getting hit for weakness. One Clement's backpack, we're KOing the Froakie with Magneton and dealing some significant damage to the bench, which is a really, really, really big deal. It's going to be pretty nice. That aggression is always nice in a Suicune and Greninja, especially because it's not the fastest paced deck in the game, especially if they go first. You know what I mean? We can kind of have that benefit, especially if they lead Froakie, right? So I really like this list. And again, Chingling plus this Magneton, Oricorio, it's enough. I think that really boosts this deck's win rate into Suicune and Greninja. And if I was going to play... Excuse me, I'm sorry, I'm still sick. If I was going to play Oricorio Magnezone, this would likely be the version that I choose to play, because I'm not super confident in traditional Oricorio Magnezone. I think you have to play it just a little bit more aggressively or a little bit differently to give a little bit of an advantage, a little bit of an edge into the metagame right now. Just a lot of stuff seeing play that can kind of deal with Oricorio pretty easily. Furfrou is running around everywhere. Hydreigon is still very common. Other Magnezone decks, Greninja's everywhere. So Oricorio as a Pokemon isn't that as relevant as it was previously, but Chingling still very good. I love Chingling. I really do. I think Chingling's kind of worth playing in most decks. However, you're going to see that some of the decks in this video that I'm recommending, the strongest, are actually not playing Chingling. It's very interesting. We'll talk about it later. But next up is going to be Hydreigon, or Hydreigon, as people like to tell me in the comments. It just is longer to say Hydreigon. I just like to say Hydreigon. It's like I don't know. It's something that I do. But anyway, this Pokemon is broken. It's an incredible card. I do think that this deck is not as strong as people seem to think or have it in their brain. It has won a few tournaments. It's very commonly played in tournaments. It's common in ranked as well. It's not a deck that I really worry playing against. In fact, it's just not something that I put too much stock into. This is a deck that's not playing Rocky Helmet, or not playing Giant Capes. They're playing Rocky Helmets, which means that even if they have Indeedee, Hydreigon is going to go to what is it, 130 damage, or I guess 140, right, with the Indeedee heal. But if you're playing Rocky Helmets, which so many decks are playing Rocky Helmets, that Hydreigon only hitting for 130 damage sometimes won't even take the KO, and if it does take the KO, Rocky Helmet's going to bring it down low enough to get KO'd back. So I just don't think the metagame is very, kind to Hydreigon right now. I think there's other cards that I would rather play, but I know that there's people that really do enjoy playing this deck, and this is the version that I would play. So I wanted to include it. It is high roll, you know what I mean? So I put it in the same same vein as like a Blaziken deck, although I would actually lean a little bit more towards Blaziken right now than I would Hydreigon, but you know what? I still think it's a quality deck. The Giovanni's to hit for 140 to KO the Suicunes, even though they play Giant Cape, you know, yada, yada, yada. It is what it is. Also, no middle evolutions here. People sometimes play Xylos in Hydreigon, but I really don't think that the middle evolutions are really that worth playing. Like, I still don't. I know Chingling's becoming more common, but that middle evolution is not going to help you unless you get it out on your second turn, and odds are you probably won't. So it's just kind of like taking up a slot in your 20-card deck. And I feel the same way about Suicune, quite frankly. And again, this is a deck that gets affected by Chingling pretty aggressively, quite frankly. So not only does it stop you from playing Rare Candy, but Pokeballs. And you know, that's an underrated aspect of Chingling, quite frankly, is the fact that you can't Pokeball. Like, how many games do you get Chingling locked and then you just can't get the basic Pokemon to actually play your deck list because you rely on Pokeball? It's a big reason why Lyssia decks are so strong. But that is, again, beside the point. I still think Hydreigon is strong enough to be considered to be played, right? Furfrou here is kind of the default better leadoff option, especially into opposing Chingling decks. Furfrou is a very universal strong card. It's ended up being one of the more impactful cards that came out in Crimson Blaze. Is 70 HP, minus 20 from attacks, 30 damage for one colorless. It's just a good Pokemon, especially in the face of all of these baby Pokemon and or Corios and Chinglings. It's just a good card, and it fits very well into so many different archetypes. We've seen it play with Altaria. We saw it in that Blaziken deck, and honestly, I really do like it in the Hydreigon deck as well. You can go Furfrou into Hydreigon, or go Furfrou into Hydreigon and then Mega Absol, right? Furfrou plus Indeedee is kind of a tank. Like, minus 20 from attacks, plus you heal 20 every turn. Like, Oricorio is hitting you for 10 damage every turn. Like, it's like, it does kind of solve some issues as well in the early game. It's just a strong leadoff. And it also kind of buffers the opportunity to lead Mega Absol or Indeedee in the active spot, which of course, you know, you don't want, you know what I mean? So I do like the deck. This is how I would play it. It's not my #1 recommendation, but it is a deck list, and I know people enjoy playing Hydreigon, so this is my list that I would choose to play if I were to play Hydreigon. I actually never tested this myself. I just didn't need to because I played against it, and I could envision what it's like to play Hydreigon. So this is the version that I would play. One of the few decks that I didn't test out personally, but I played enough Hydreigon. I played against it enough to know kind of, you know, where it sits in the metagame. But anyway, there you go. Next up, guys, is the notification that you have to subscribe. I guess you don't have to, but I would recommend it. Like, basically, almost 50% of you guys that are watching my content, you right now watching this video, you're probably not subscribed. So, you know, go ahead, check to see if you're subscribed to the channel. It supports me. I would appreciate it. We're on the road to 50,000 subscribers. So, you know, go ahead and check it out. Hit that subscribe button. That's all this is about. Anyway, moving on, is going to be Altaria. Let's get into some Altaria decks here. The first one is going to be Greninja. I think this deck is really good. Again, for the same reasons kind of that the Dark Greninja deck is really good. It's Chingling Greninja. And that's inherently really broken, especially into decks that, you know, don't play Chingling. It's just, it gives you an inherent advantage there. It's kind of the easiest way to safely get Greninja online. And Mega Altaria is also a really good card. Going second, Mega Altaria is so terrifying. We could utilize Lyssia in this deck, which is a really big deal. Honestly, this is sort of the version that has taken over in terms of sorry. Oh my gosh. Has kind of taken over popularity from Dark Greninja. Just not many people are playing the Dark version. A lot of people playing the Greninja Altaria version. Now, it's not my #1 recommendation for Altaria, which is a spoiler. My #1 deck in this video is coming up, and it is Altaria, but it's not Greninja Altaria. This is still a really strong deck. When I hit this on the ranked ladder, I'm a little bit scared, especially if I'm not playing Chingling, just because like that Greninja damage, like combined with Mega Altaria, it's 150. It's 150 plus double Cyrus. Like, you got to hope that you're playing Pokemon that have more than 150 HP, or it's going to be a little bit scary. Now, the only thing about this deck is that it doesn't really have any attacking options other than Mega Altaria, right? So, you know, if you're playing things like Indeedee, you can kind of live forever in the face of Chingling, and then if you're playing something that's somewhat aggressive, you can KO the Chinglings, force them into their Altaria, KO your Altaria, and maybe we can Mars them and hope that they don't have like the second Cyrus or something. It's kind of awkward, to be fair, but you know, this is a deck list that if it draws correctly, it goes second, it's going to be really difficult to deal with because they're just going to go 150 KO, 150 KO, right? So at the end of the day, it's a very difficult deck to beat, but most of the time it ends up beating itself. It is something that I would definitely recommend, and it is sort of one of those premier decks I think in the game right now. Definitely like a top 5 deck. Extraordinarily strong, a little bit awkward, but Chingling kind of carries this deck in the early game. You know, if you lead Swablu, if you don't get the Chinglings, or if you lead Froakie, You get Chingling locked yourself, it's a little bit awkward, right? So the only counterplay to other Chinglings is to use Sing Swablu, which is, not the most consistent thing in the world, but it is kind of crazy that is like a win condition for this deck, is to just like put your opponent's Chingling to sleep and then you can evolve Greninja and then go from there. It's kind of ridiculous, I'm not gonna lie. A very, very strong deck. I have to recommend it. So yeah, I mean, I think everyone's pretty familiar with this deck list. Very, very good. Even though it hasn't won, it's probably won a couple of tournaments so far this season, but I don't really remember any. That it's won, but it's definitely a really good deck. Next up is, it's Suicune Greninja. I mean, we couldn't not include Suicune and Greninja in this video, right? I think everybody understands that this is still the guy. You're going to play it a bunch on Ranked, and if you're playing this deck on Ranked, I honestly would still recommend it. People ask me sometimes, like, what about the double Greninja build? There's plenty of people that like to play that deck. To be fair, the only downside to playing double Greninja is that it's just not as good in the head-to-head mirror matchup. And that's the reality of it. Like, if you could sneak in like a Repel or a Sabrina, which are still really good cards into Suicune and Greninja, then maybe, that matchup would be a bit better. But in the head-to-head, you're going to want double Water Shuriken and double Cyrus. It's just better for the head-to-head mirror matchup. It's a big reason why you'll end up winning those matchups. So for that reason, I just always recommend double Water Shuriken above double Shifting Stream Greninja EX, just because it's better in the head-to-head mirror matchup. So unless there's some other matchups where double Greninja EX is just way better, and those matchups are very common, I would just stick to the traditional version. We're not playing Frogadier in this deck, and again, for the same reasons, we're not playing Zweilous and Hydreigon. It comes down to the fact that if you don't have it on turn 2, it just doesn't matter if you have it or not. And there's probably other cards that you would rather play in your deck. Like this deck is playing one Copycat, specifically again for the mirror matchup. It's very, very relevant. So, Copycat is also underrated in Suicune because you can counter Copycat and then stop your opponent from copycatting you. So if you can get your board state online, you can kind of just like dump your hand with Copycat, and then your opponent can't reverse Copycat you and then draw a bunch of cards and then draw their win condition. So it's actually sort of a defensive card sometimes when you're playing it in Suicune. It's very interesting. But this is a very this is a very standard Suicune and Greninja deck, but I think standard is fine for Suicune and Greninja. I will say that as far as like skill gaps go, this is probably like the highest skill gap deck in the game, or at least one of them. People might laugh at that, but I mean, the truth is that this is like, I know Pokemon Pocket's not the most complex game in the world. Like, I think we all understand that, but there's a lot more simpler decks that you can be playing than this deck. So unless you have experience with this, or unless you kind of know what you're doing, I honestly wouldn't really recommend this. It's probably just better that you play something that's at least strong into this, that's a little bit more simple to play. I mean, that's just the reality of it, right? And I know we're only talking like minuscule differences, but a 3% win rate difference from like an experience level can make a big difference, right? And I think that other decks don't really require as much thought or experience to play as Suicune and Greninja does. That might sound strange, and people like to say Pokemon Pocket's all locked, but it's really not, especially in Ranked, right? Winning 50% of your games and winning 55% of your games is a massive difference in Ranked. It really is. The other thing that I wanted to mention here just randomly, 22 minutes into this video, is that most people will play Ranked and then hit Master Ball and say that they're done. And no disrespect to those people. If you just want to hit Master Ball and then stop playing the game, that is totally fine. I'm not I'm not going to discredit that at all, but I do think that the main reason you should be playing Ranked is to play Ranked, right? So it's like, once you hit Master Ball, continue to play, like try to get into top 10,000, maybe 5,000, maybe 1,000, right? I know most people don't have that much time, but even if, you don't have enough time to do top 1,000 or whatever, it's still just fun to play Ranked. The whole point of playing Ranked is to have fun. You know what I mean? It's not just to get your free pack. So again, I would recommend that you continue to play into Master Ball, try out all of these decks. You're going to have maybe a good time. That would be crazy if, having a good time playing Pokemon Pocket. But anyway, it is what it is. Suicune Greninja is still a top deck, quite frankly, and I have to recommend it. So there you go. Lastly is actually going to be my #1 recommendation right now at the beginning of this ranked season. And after that is going to be the weekly wild card. So anyway, my #1 deck to play right now in ranked battles is going to be, it's Giratina. It's Giratina Altaria. This deck has been popping off in tournaments. When I was reviewing all of the decks, when I was testing decks for ranked today, and I played a bunch of games today, this is the deck to me that like felt just like way more I don't know. It just felt correct in ranked. Like, given all of the decks that I was playing, this deck felt not only very consistent, but had very, very good matchups into basically everything I was playing against, and nothing felt bad to me. Giratina is broken, at least in this deck list, so it is kind of like a Return of the King type moment here. Giratina's back, and I really think that it's worth playing. People, I think, have just sort of counted out Giratina, but this deck list is broken. I'll break it down really quickly to you for people that maybe don't really understand this deck list. Giratina is our leadoff option, right? So if we're not playing Chingling in the deck, and the reason we're not playing Chingling is because honestly, like Chingling is good, but like this is a deck that doesn't get counterplayed by Chingling, right? So instead of playing Chingling Altaria, what we're playing is Giratina Altaria. So we lead Giratina, and whether we're going first or second, we're able to Broken Space Bellow and get those energies onto Giratina. Now, keep in mind, Giratina has 150 HP. Not many things in the game can one-hit KO Giratina. In fact, almost nothing is one-hit KOing Giratina in the game right now, especially on like turn 2 or turn 3. But we're playing Psychic Energies in this deck list, which means that we can actually get the 4 energies onto Giratina by our 3rd turn pretty consistently. So it's kind of like a ticking time bomb. It's kind of tanking energy in the active spot, or if we are going up against a deck that's very aggressive, we can split energies. We can Broken Space Bellow on Giratina attached to our Swablu on the bench. You know, turn 2, we can Broken Space Bellow and then, you know, or retreat at a Giratina and then actually just get the first attack off with Mega Altaria. So we can actually use Giratina as like a pivot instead of an attacking option. Or if we're playing against a slower deck, we can kind of use it as like a ticking time bomb attacker where it's like, well, if you're not doing anything, like I'm just going to set up my board, and like, you know, the chip damage is completely irrelevant into Giratina because we're playing double Indeedee. So the whole board state here is to lead Giratina, get a Swablu on the bench, get double Indeedees down, you know, Rocky Helmet your specific Pokemon that you think are going to be targeted, and then just start swinging away. And that's kind of the whole thing about this deck list. Way more consistent than you might think. Indeedee itself is actually a pretty valuable attacking option in a number of different scenarios. I noticed into the Venusaur matchup, Indeedee's kind of broken because Ivysaur with like 3 energies gets wrecked by Indeedee. So Indeedee is actually a pretty valuable attacking card in its own right. Not the card you want to lead off with, but you know, honestly, if Giratina's on the bench, we can kind of do the reverse strategy and just attach one to Indeedee and then start to double up on Giratina, and then we can kind of balance our energies that way. But you know, most of the time when you're playing the Altaria mirror matchups, or if you're playing against other Mega Pokemon, it's, you know, really about who can bring their Mega Pokemon in second, right? Like, how do you force your opponent to bring in their Mega Pokemon before we bring in ours? And Giratina is a very, very good way to do that because they're kind of forced to bring in their Mega Pokemon to deal with Giratina. And even if they KO us, we just bring into all our Altaria. That's hard to say. And then we do a KO pressure, right? With Sabrina, with Cyrus. It's a very good deck. Rocky Helmet plus Giovanni to hit above that 130 damage threshold, both with Mega Altaria and Giratina. It's a very strong deck. Honestly, I would just recommend that you guys play this deck because I really like it. We can also just sing to stall for a couple of turns. That's won me a few games. Yeah, this was by far the most successful deck, at least in like the limited sample size of games that I played when I was testing. When I checked its average win rates in tournaments, it's amongst the highest in the entire game right now. So I really like it. I really like it. The Silvally version of Mega Altaria is also extremely good, but it feels a lot worse into Suicune and Greninja specifically, which is why I'm going with this version and not the Silvally version. So I really like this deck. Honestly, it's sort of an epiphany that I had just a couple of days ago and specifically today, but I really, really like it and I just can't recommend it enough. This is something that I would definitely test out. And very simple. This is a very simple deck where it's like, doesn't require a ton of thought, you know what I mean? Like, it just doesn't, like, you can just sort of play a bunch of games and you don't have to worry about misplaying because it's a pretty straightforward deck. You just got to make sure that you're attaching to the right Pokemon. Very fun, very easy to play, very well positioned. I just can't recommend it enough, quite frankly. So there you go. That's my #1 recommendation right now, at least for this first week of ranked battles. Mega Altaria, Giratina, and Indeedee. Really funny. It's a really fun deck. Kind of makes me, it reminds me a little bit of like Espeon back in the day, playing double Indeedee. It's like healing for 40 every turn is crazy. You know, you could also play Pokemon Center Lady in this deck, which is going to be pretty relevant in a couple of matchups. I don't know what you would cut here. I guess maybe one copycat you could cut for like Pokemon Center Lady. That's something you could cut. The Giovanni here, you could also cut that for red. I would play both versions. I was like, do I need red or can I play Giovanni? I haven't really figured that out. There might be some scenarios where red is just better than Giovanni. I think it really comes down to whether or not you're playing Magnezone a lot, because I think Magnezone has 140. I could be wrong about that. Maybe it has 130. So maybe Giovanni's fine. Honestly, I don't know, because Rocky Helmet's doing most of the difference here. I know Hydreigon and stuff, but yeah, I think either red or Giovanni. I don't know which is better. Try them both out. I think they're both probably pretty fine, but this deck is playing Giovanni. And anyway, yeah, there we go. Okay, so next up, guys, is going to be the weekly wild card. That's going to be the last deck that we talk about in today's video. Now, this is not a deck that is new to anybody else, but it is something that, you know, I think was just on the outside of like my top recommendations, but you know, it's something that we're all familiar with, and I honestly wanted to talk about it because I think it is a pretty significant factor in the ranked metagame, and that is going to be Jolteon. Yeah, I mean, Jolteon's the wild card. I know it's not the most crazy wild card. It's everybody knows Jolteon. But to me, Jolteon is that deck that's always like fringe right now. You know, again, you know, we talked about counter Suicune, right? How to do well in ranked is kind of, you know, how do we do well into Suicune? Jolteon's very good into Suicune, but I actually like it into a multitude of other things. Hydreigon specifically, it's going to do well into, and then also that Giratina deck that we just mentioned, right? So we're like counter playing myself by doing this. I think that honestly, the Giratina deck probably will catch on, and Jolteon is a deck that actually does pretty well into Giratina. And I love beginning Bolt Jolteon. It's absolutely broken. Like it KOs like a Froakie turn 1 with Giant Cape. It's just a crazy card. Beginning Bolt Jolteon, Boosted Evolution Eevee, Rocky Helmets, Cyrus, Jolteon EX, Red, and Eevee Bags, Sabrina's. It's a really aggressive lightning type deck, and that bodes well into Suicune and Greninja. You know, I've tested Jolteon a little bit, and it does feel good into Suicune Greninja, but there's a lot of other matchups that I just kind of shy away from, specifically the grass type decks, which, you know, are typically people's more preferred options for specifically counterplaying Suicune, so be a little bit careful about that. But Jolteon is our weekly wild card this week, and I do like Jolteon, so I wanted to go ahead and showcase it to you guys. I apologized if I sound a little bit off in this video. I'm still sick, but I wanted to make this video for you guys. We'll try to go live soon. I don't know if I'll feel well enough to go live, but we do have our live stream tomorrow and Sunday for the tournament. We'll definitely go live for some ranked battles over the next few weeks because I love to do that, and I haven't gone live in a while. But again, I've been sick and I've been busy. It's been tough, but anyway, stay tuned for that. I usually let people know in the Discord if I'm going live, or you'll just see me live on YouTube. Usually it's like later at night. Yeah, there we go, guys. There's the video. Comment down below. Let me know what you guys think. Best of luck in your ranked climb. I strongly urge you to continue to play all season, even if you hit Master Ball. It's a lot of fun. Or if you want to take a break from ranked and play in online tournaments, I would definitely recommend playing in online tournaments as well. A couple of weeks for ranked, and then we'll get the announcement for B2, and then off we are into the new season and into the next, you know, I guess metagame. It's gonna go by quick. I definitely think so. Yeah, that's it. Let's wrap up the video, guys. Like and subscribe. Register for PMPT number 16 tomorrow. It's going to be a lot of fun. Peace out, guys. Have a good one. We'll see you guys later. And yeah. Bye.